Hello, Swivel Heads. This is Greg Awesome Green Rigs coming to you on the 24th of February 22. Time on deck is 21:35 hours Central Standard Time. My friends, I talked to you just yesterday about nuclear war survival or survival of nuclear events, which are more than just nuclear war. And unfortunately, not that many of you watched that video. You really need to go back and watch that video before you watch this video. It would really help you because in that video, I talk about what radiation is. I talk about how you need to shield from it, how much shielding you need, and other various aspects, including some of the causes. I talk about nuclear mushroom clouds and what to do should you see those, what to do if we get under attack. The first things you should do, that's on that video. This video, I'm going to go a little bit more into talking about the nuclear power plants and why you've got to worry about them, why there is a credible failure, even at the spent fuel rod pools, and why if our power grid goes down for many sundry reasons, you could have a radiological event. We're also going to talk a little bit more about Putin and the Ukrainian war here to start, and we're going to talk about shelters and what to do on the farm should one of these events happen. So bear with me, buckle up. We got a lot of ground to cover. So please go back and watch that other video. That's a very important video. As soon as you can, watch it first if you at all can, because that video goes in great detail. This might be a shorter video, and I did a video. It begins, a live session in the wee hours this morning. And that video got 2,900 viewers in a nuclear war, avoiding nuclear war, how to survive it, part 1. Only got like 1,300 viewers. Man, it should be the other way around. You guys should be watching that one mostly. So that's really the most important thing, guys. You got to really pay attention to what you need to do to survive, because this is a proposition that channel help you survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. And that's why I bring you these videos. It's part of my eyes wide open, head on the swivel series, guys. So also I got a lot of other videos in this series, the things that you need to know to get ready. How to grow your own gardens without having to go to the store, which won't be available. That's the kind of gardening videos I put up there. It's how to make your own compost, how to grow using that compost. When I show a garden bed video, a lot of it's in the bed prep. That seems boring if you want to just see how to plant stuff, but if you don't have all that other stuff, when you got there to plant stuff, you ain't gonna grow nothing. Your garden's going nowhere. That's why you need to watch my videos on these topics. And also I have plenty of videos on how to eat free from the weeds and the trees, my friends, and go to the box stores. You need to be doing that right now. If you're not prepping right now, you're in trouble. Subscribe to my channel, bang the update notification bell, and click on. Please share my videos, especially these on nuclear survival. Also, you will note I've got a video on bug outs. I got a bug out video, a general bug out, but I've also got a video on nuclear bug out. So I refine that topic even more. And that very much pertains to this subject matter. And I've also done a video with Stacy Zivicki, 2 videos actually, about what to do in the first 24 and 48 hours after a radiological event, after a nuclear strike. So, or EMP. All these things fit together. These all fit together. So you need to watch all of these. So let's get into this. Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, subscribe, bang the update notification bell, and click, y'all. And yes, by the way, before I forget, I do have a special you better really consider right now, because I'm told from Canadian Prepper and others that the prices of long-term food storage is about to go painfully high real fast. Right now, we got a good special. You need to consider it. If you don't believe me, go watch Canadian Prepper. He goes all into that stuff. So go watch his channel. He talks about it, and he's done several videos on that topic, my friends. But you can expect food prices to go up, and given that, and also the availabilities to go down. So you got to be prepping as much as you can right now. But I got a real good deal right now. If you go to prepwithgreg.com, you can get $50 off a 1 month supply. It's 2 of these buckets. It's got 2,000 calories per day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have to keep hunger away. Like the 800 calories that a lot of competitors have. This stuff is easy to store. You can bury it because these are sealed containers, and they also have sealed pouches inside of them. So it's double sealed. So it's good if you want to go out and have a cache to bury. It's easy to haul, easy to take out. That's the cool thing about these things. And you can also get $150 off a 3-month supply. These are great deals. You better get it while the getting's good. $150 off a 3-month supply is excellent, guys. And buy as many as you can while you can, because that may not be available for long. Also, go on that Prep with Greg. When you go to prepwithgreg.com for these deals, also check on My Patriot Supply logo up at the top of the page, and it will take you into all kind of other great prepping deals and long-term food storage. Nobody out there has the selection that My Patriot Supply has. Nobody else has that kind of selection. Also, you can get other prepping supplies there too, water and air filtration and things you're using at campsite, bugging out. So, okay, enough said about that. Let's talk about Putin. Let's talk about Russia and Ukraine, and we're going to talk about our power grid and things like that, so that you can be aware of the kind of radiological events that we face. And whether Putin and Ukraine lead us ultimately to World War III or not, a lot of people say, well, it's not going to happen, and it may not. And let's hope it don't. Some are fearing otherwise. But he's made a lot of interesting, peculiar threats that we need to pay attention to. Just like his threat, about Ukraine. Kind of a veiled threat. He didn't exactly ever say he was going to go in, but it was kind of implied. While he said he wasn't going to do it, it was kind of implied he would do it, and well, he did it. So when he actually gives you a direct threat, you might pay attention to him. He's a man of business. He means what he says as much as he can. I'll do a little sharing here. Excuse me, guys. I want to share a few news articles here real quick, and then I'm going to go into a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to finish the PowerPoint presentation I'd set out to do yesterday. That's this here. Okay, hang on. You got to bear in mind, before they declared Donetsk and Luhansk to be independent republics, which supposedly invited Russia in, and they went in to protect. The day before that, Putin did something that he usually does later in the year, like in the fall. They usually have their nuclear drills later in the year, but this time they had it the day before this, the day before they declared Donetsk and Luhansk to be independent republics. And Putin personally oversaw these nuclear drills. Was this a message? Well, he didn't really talk that specifically later, but yeah, I think this was a message to the West. He was trying to tell us something. Also, Putin went in and made it a point to point out that he's got hypersonic missiles ready to launch. And he said this the day after the invasion. In fact, he warned that weapons without parallel in the world have been put on combat duty. Combat duty. That's not just something you got laying around strategically, like your typical intercontinental ballistic missile barrage. Combat duty, hypersonic missiles, huge warning. But he's also sent other clear signals out here, and this is the most chilling signal. This is the one that everybody else is really keen on. This is the one that's really got people's hair standing on the back of their neck. And Putin did say this in a televised newscast. So don't say, oh, Greg, that's conspiracy, fake news. You need to watch don't watch Western media, watch Eastern. No, Putin said this himself, okay? Putin said this, okay? Putin said it. He said that he issued a dire threat to Western nations. This was Thursday morning. Actually, yesterday, because they're a day ahead of us now. Of course, we're still in Thursday here in my time frame, but they're now on Friday. Anyway, he said Western nations would face consequences greater. I should just highlight this part. Consequences greater than any you have faced in history. Well, we've had World War II. We've had all kind of consequences. America got attacked. We had Pearl Harbor. We've had 9/11. We've had British troops here running through our continent twice, and we had a war between the states here in America. He's talking also to Western European countries, which had their nations ravaged by World War II. I mean, Capitol buildings and cities razed to the ground almost in lots of places. So consequences greater than any you have faced in history if they become involved in this invasion in Ukraine. A lot of people are interpreting this to be a nuclear threat. Now, coming after he made statements about hypersonic missiles, coming the day after a couple days after he personally oversaw the nuclear drills, I think that has a lot of merit. And there are those generals and that are concerned about a World War III. This particular article is concerned about this escalating into the Baltic nations. That the idea, well, it's going to be so easy for him to take Ukraine that maybe he'll just turn around and go for the Baltic nations. And the Baltic nations, of course, are NATO nations, and maybe Putin thinks he can get away with it because the NATO and West are so weak that it's worth a gamble, and then he would go after the Baltic countries. Now, whether he would or would not, and I'm sure a lot of people say, oh, there's no way he would do that. And the same ones said he wouldn't go into Ukraine, right? Well, I hope he wouldn't, and he might not. But we don't know that. That's the problem. We don't know that. What I am concerned about is not so much this. I know David Pine was just concerned about the fact we're putting all our forces on the borders of all the former Soviet republics and are now NATO, and that Putin sees that as threatening, and he would do something risky to counter that, or maybe attack because we're doing that, because that would make him feel threatened, according to David Pine, who is and earn a good living being a military analyst within the Pentagon, dealing with just these matters and negotiating these matters in Europe in his career. So he's got expertise in that area. He's dealt with these people and these negotiations. So I can't dismiss what he says right out of hand, like a lot of you would do so fast. However, I'm concerned because Putin actually threatened to put troops and missiles in Venezuela and Cuba. Don't bring back any memories of the Cuban Missile Crisis, does it? Okay, so there's several different trip points, several different things that could lead to escalations of these events, including maybe one of the countries, one of the other NATO nations, like some of the Baltic nations or Poland or Great Britain, providing some bit of aid to Ukraine that causes Putin to snap and hit them, because it's in violation of what he just said here. And each of these countries are considering different ways to aid Ukraine right now, because they feel threatened themselves, and they think they need to do whatever they can to help them to keep Putin from wanting to run over them. And that may be the real risk if all these things are to escalate. Problem with war is you don't know, once it gets started, you don't know how it's going to turn. You don't know how it may or may not escalate. It's hard to predict these things. War takes on a life of its own, just like a raging fire. Wherever the fuel and oxygen are, that's where the flames go. And war has got a lot of similarities to that, fortunately. So, we can only hope and pray for the best on this one. I'm going to stop that share. We're going to go in our presentation. So I have another page on this. Let me see here. One other thing to bring up here. It's this formation of naval vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean right now that the Russians have amassed. It's been very unusual. Russia has reinforced its naval presence in the Mediterranean much more than usual. And let's see what they're talking about. They're talking about this has been seen the Sentinel-2 satellite. The formation is 0.9 miles by 1.7 miles, which is a lot tighter than normal, probably going to the Syrian port of Tartus, which is their only outside military base for Russia. It's their biggest warm water base in terms of being outside of the and free and open water, pretty much on the Atlantic side, or kind of sort of the Atlantic side. You still got to get through the Straits of Gibraltar, right? But it's thought they might try to go into the Black Sea, and Ukraine is trying to get Turkey to not allow them to go through the Straits of Bosphorus. And it's yet to be seen what Turkey would do with that. But what are we talking about? We're talking about some very serious missiles carrying ships like the Salva-class cruisers that have 16 P-1 Vulcan supersonic missiles on each one of them. And there's quite a number of ships involved in this flotilla. Somewhere here tells us the number of ships, I believe. But I saw it somewhere. But anyway, might have been another article. My friends, this is a large group of ships that they've got out there that, let's see, where's the number at? 16 ships. 16 ships. I'm not going to go there anymore. But just suffice it to say, they're shoring themselves up in different areas and preparing themselves to secure their flank in case somebody challenges them in Ukraine. Well, that's a smart thing to do if you're Putin. I mean, quite frankly, if that's the way you want to go about, if you want to invade another country and you're worried about other countries taking a swipe at you or hitting you somewhere else, you're going to try to secure your flanks or have other ways to get these guys off your back. Okay, maybe that's what he's up to. But see, all these are ways for this to escalate, because who's going to be hitting them? Now, the only ones that could is other NATO nations. Would they? I don't think they'd want to directly do that in Ukraine, since it's not a NATO nation. But like I said, the Baltic countries and Poland, the ones who were previously Warsaw Pact nations under the Soviet control, they're the ones who want the least to do with it. They don't want this. They don't want to stay out, and they're afraid that they're going to be next to be seized, and they are providing aid to Ukraine. And maybe it goes beyond the pale for what Putin has established. I don't know, anything goes beyond the pale with him, but what's this threshold? What would be the threshold to make him snap? What would be the thing that make him launch missiles at one of these other countries? And would they launch back, and when do we get involved? If a nation gets attacked, if a NATO nation gets attacked by another country under Article 5 of the NATO treaty, we're all in. That's it. And Putin may doubt that. He may test that in some fashion. Would he? That's pretty mad. It's pretty insane. But then again, there are those that are saying right now that he's mad. Some think he's a genius. Time will tell, right? Time will tell. But that's not really the purpose of my video. My purpose of this video here is to communicate to you that there may be radiological events coming. So you'll sit here and argue with all these things. I don't really care. The tit for tat of all these things isn't the driving point of this video. The driving point of this video is we may be facing radiological events. Why? Mainly because if none of these things happen, our power grid, if we don't do something about it, will go down. And if it's not brought down by an EMP or a terrorist activity, the sun is going to take it down eventually. And it may be sooner rather than later. And then we got some problems, and there will be radiological events to deal with. So what I'm about to show you matters. That's why you need to go back and watch that part 1 of nuclear war survival, nuclear event survival. Yeah, that matters. This stuff matters more than what's going on in Ukraine, because that may or may not peter out to anything for us right here at home. Other than it will disrupt our economy, it will disrupt supply chain, it will disrupt fuel supplies, which will cascade and disrupt in power, food supplies, and prices are going to go up. Those are given. That's already in the cards, and that's coming at you. It's kind of like you're looking at the wave in the ocean coming at you. Once it's coming, it's coming. That's coming. Now, in terms of war with Russia, I would hope not, but you can't rule it out. I'd hope not, but I definitely would not rule it out, especially the way things seem to be escalating. But okay, but the power grid, you may not realize it, but there are 3 guys who just pled guilty to a plot to attack the power grid here in the United States, domestic sorts, who were said to be right-wing extremists. And I mean more so than normal. I mean, like there were supposedly Nazi skinheads. I don't know who these guys were. I just know that these guys have pled guilty. How many times do I get a comment from somebody in my channels, in my videos, after I've presented so many times the danger of these nuclear power plants and how it's going to get you if you don't do something about it? You say, oh, we should take down the power grid. I've had several people say that. Oh, the power grid should go down. It would be a good thing if it would go down. Why? Because people know that that's how those that control maintain a lot of control over us. And so they think that would take it away from them. It might, but when you look at the consequences of what we got to deal with radiological events, there's other ways to deal with it. We can deal with it. We can still push them politically and through other routes. That's why I got the Freedom Restoration Foundation, and also been active in 2 national power grid defense committees, and I've chaired 2 power grid defense conferences. And that's my podium plaque right there. We haven't done so. Okay, let's get into this. Let's go into the PowerPoint. I'm going to share screen. Ta-da! Nuclear survival. All right, forgive me for not blowing this chart up and going into presentation mode, because I've discovered Zoom will not support that. It will stay stuck at the first chart I was on that blew up, and it will not go through with me when I'm flipping them. Why? I don't know. It's supposed to be doing what's on the screen, but that's not what it does. in this case. So we're just going to have to kind of flip through these bit by bit, and we're going to pick up from where we left off the other video. So if you want to know what was in the other video, go watch it. And oops, I've still got that select. Pardon me. Trying to switch slides. So let's go. Now here is a paper from Sandia National Laboratories. This is a scientific paper. There's more than one of these, and also know well that the French have also investigated this and found what I'm talking about to be true. That the zirconium alloy that's on the fuel pellets that are included in will burn on contact with air when they're hot enough. And I've had a nuclear engineer getting a big argument with me over this, tell me it wouldn't happen. He was like a multi-decade friend, and he unfriended me and has never contacted me since. Oh, hey, buddy, I got the test results. What have you got? And he just had his own opinion because he had one sitting on his bookshelf. Well, it ain't a hot one. Okay, yeah. And I gave a woman a cubic zirconium ring once too. She actually asked for it. So, yeah, at normal temperatures, and those things are stable. But when you've been inside of a fuel rod assembly and you've been irradiated and you're hot and you got the enrichment from hydrogen, which is a fuel, then you're going to be a lot more flammable. But these tests were run on unenriched zirconium alloy rods. Okay, so the ones in the reactors are actually more dangerous than the ones that were tested in these tests, and they did find that they absolutely will burn. Now the burning is going to depend on how bad they burn. Will depend on how hot they are, which depends on the age of the uranium fuel pellets in the fuel rods. Now bear in mind, I got to tell you this, that in those cooling pools, we talk about them as spent rods cooling pools, but they actually stage brand new nuclear fuel that's going into the plant in the same fuel rod pools before they put it in the plant. I didn't know that until one of the operators who worked with TVA told me about this. Oh yeah, that's what we do. We've been doing that for years. And he says, I know, I've done it. So, you know, I may have people arguing with me. Oh, no, that don't happen, Greg. Well, I've had an operator tell me that he's done it, and that happens. And he's worked at more than one nuclear power plant in the TVA system. It's Tennessee Valley Authority, by the way. So I got to take his word at it, you know. So here we go, guys. The spent fuel rods are something to be concerned with. Now, I've got this entire presentation. I mean, I got the whole paper, but the paper don't have any graphs or pictures in it too much, not so much, it's mostly text. But they also did an accompanying presentation, kind of like PowerPoint, but in a PDF file. So I've broken that up, put it here in my PowerPoint for your viewing pleasure. And this is the report on these tests. And if you want to go to Sandia National Laboratories and talk to Sam Durbin or Eric Lindgren, help yourselves. These are the guys who wrote this presentation here. Sandia National Laboratories. I've been there. So here we go. So what happened in 2003, people said, hey, you know, these after we've had this 9/11, we need to worry about these spent fuel rod pools, because if we get the water depleted, this zircaloy, which is the zirconium clad alloy, can burn on contact with air. And so these allegations were made. So they did a comprehensive study in 2004 and reported to Congress, and they were finding, yeah, that they thought it was possible that this would take place. They did computer models, which verified that. And then so they launched into a test series, testing boiling water reactor fuels and also pressurized water reactor fuel rod assembly configurations. That's two different configurations. They did tests in 2005 and 2009. This is the older technology, boiling water reactors. That's like what we've had in Fukushima. That's the same thing we got out here in Browns Ferry through these old reactors. And the pressurized ones are the new ones, but they're actually more sensitive, I suppose, from what I'm saying here. And again, this is kind of a boiling water reactor fuel. And I showed you a boiling water reactor being installed at Browns Ferry in the previous presentation. I didn't spend but a second on that chart, but it was in there. Okay, so examine the nature of zircaloy fires and prototypical assemblies. Prototypical means your average assembly. You know, that's just the engineering speak. Okay, guys. So they looked at different fuel rod configurations, and they, you know, from stuff that's, you know, really full to things that, you know, are more sparsely spaced patterns. to see what the effectivity would be. Of course, the more sparsely spaced, the less problems it would have with it, which is, goes to, that makes sense. Unfortunately, these fuel rod pools are full because we've not been putting the fuel away properly in Yucca Mountain like it was designed to be done, and so they don't know where else to put it. So these fuel rod pools are actually at overcapacity, unfortunately. So you can't bank on the safety you get from these lower density configurations, which should be able to help. There's ways to make this stuff a little better than what they are. Also, if you took the fuel out sooner, there'd be less fuel in these water cooling pools. There's other things that we could do, like maybe put a micro nuke power plant to assist a full nuke power plant to maintain the cooling and to restart the plant. There's things that could be done, but they are not done yet, and it will take years to get established. In the meantime, we're vulnerable. So here's some of your fuel rod assemblies. I've shown those in the other presentation. This is the difference between the assemblies you might find in a pressurized water and a boiling water reactor, and how they might be populated differently and stacked differently within the rod assembly, the fuel. And this is the phase 1 simulated decay heat test, and it actually shows the ignition test where they actually started the fires. And what they did is they modeled older fuels and newer fuels in here. So you can look at the amount of heat. See, the newer the fuel, the more the heat. That's what it really boils down to. The more the heat, the more the burn, the faster the burn. I'm going to talk about this in the summary here at the end. I'll kind of sum this up. So here's the phase 1 test assembly. And see, they have a lot of instrumentation in here. That's what they found is when they ran the test, your instruments burned up. Duh. Well, we knew that would happen. Now, thermocouples failed after ignition. Well, when you burn them, of course they're going to fail. When they melt, they're not going to operate. Predicted flow rate with an experimental uncertainty. So it was what they expected pretty much. Interesting dynamics. Burn front movement. Basically, the burn front followed down from where you had still good oxygen supply and fuel. What I said earlier about a forest fire? Yeah, well, it follows the fuel and the oxygen supply. It's the way fires operate, and combat too, I guess, in some cases. So let's see, what was it? There was another little step. Model predicted ignition within 10 minutes. What they found is that their test exceeded the model expectations in several different parameters. You'll find in some of the writing that they wrote, the actual write-up said that. Again, here's your instrumentation. And this goes into the phase 1. Oh, I think I forgot this chart in here twice, or did I skip? Oh, I said I hit the back button. Pardon me, guys. And here's what they got. This is melting in this phase 1 test of these zircaloy fuel rods. So what they did is they simulated uranium, the heat provided by uranium heaters. And it's the same heat load. That's how they did it. Now here's for the phase 2. So they did different configurations of the fuel grains. And they're really testing some newer fuels, basically here, younger fuels. They're showing the propagation. Now we're going to come back to propagation of the flame front. We'll talk about this when we get through this phase. Here's mid-plane propagation within that fuel rod assembly. And here's what happened, guys. Total burnout. These fuel rods just slap burn. They were kicking it around there. You know, see, they didn't have uranium in it, or they wouldn't be able to do this. So people are going to kick these zircaloy ashes as they are. See there, the fire in this thing, guys. They burnt slap up. They burnt slap up in this test. And for that guy to tell me, oh, it's not possible, what he told me, they cannot burn. It's not possible. Excuse me, they burned in every test conducted. Each and every single test they burned. So now how they burn differs according to the heat of the fuel, which is proportional to the age of the fuel. And these tests were done based on fuel that's come out of the reactor after it's been used, spent fuel. But you have new fuel also in these cooling pools. See, and if you've seen the cooling pools, they are stacked full of these fuel rods. I'm going to get into that in a minute. So summary. All the tests successfully completed. Phase 1, uniform loading, 16 pre-ignition tests and 1 ignition test, 9 pre-ignition tests at phase 2. So you can see the different years this ranged through. Ignition test broadcasted live to protect the members, so nobody would say they tampered with it. So they actually did it live because this is controversial. But you get guys like my ex-buddy who would swear that this will never happen. I mean, you got people that are basically in the church of nuclear power, and nuclear power is the safest thing there ever was. And they got some. There's some arguments for what they say, but also when you look at what could happen if you have a nation, if an individual nuclear power plant fails, there's a lot of safeguards built into the system and redundancy in our society to deal with it. When you have a nationwide grid down, your belts and suspenders all snap, all the safeguards are gone, and you're in free fall because all the guys in cavalry that's coming to the rescue, like the pumper trucks that came rushed into Fukushima, ain't happening. The fact is we've been maintaining pumper trucks at Fukushima for years, but when you have no fuel, no energy, no spare parts, no grid, no supply chain, that don't happen. Everything goes poof and goes into smoke. So all these safeguards that they talk about are nothing. They're useless at that point. So don't lecture me about that. I will get in your face and tell you what a bunch of hooey that is. And challenge you to show me otherwise, and you can't do it. You can't do it because I know I've been in arguments with these guys. So check it out, guys. So what they found here is burn initially propagated near the top of the fuel assemblies. Yeah, and then it burned down, falling in the air and the fuel. In the top, because that's the hardest part, where the water evaporates first, and then it just goes down. Clad in fire, breached the pull rack and propagated to the peripheral assemblies. So you start to fire in one place, and you get fire propagation to the other assemblies. This is what I'm going to talk about in a minute. Significant depletion of nitrogen in the initial stage of ignition, more energetic burn than previously modeled. See this, guys? More energetic burn than previously modeled. This says the burn rates exceeded the models. Okay. Yeah, this stuff burned. You saw those last photographs, they burnt slap up in those photographs. Severe thermal environment caused all pressurized fuel pins to balloon, all of them. No measurable thermal hydraulic ballooning, no measurable thermal hydraulic impact from ballooning. Okay, let's see. Let's go back up here. There's something else I missed showing you guys. I think that we need to look at. Where is it at? Somewhere in there is telling us. It's not there. Okay, maybe I didn't get the chart that I want to talk from here, but basically what they've said somewhere in this presentation or in this paper itself was that what their findings was that you would have a very significant radiological event, a lot of radiation dumped in the environment in an event like this. It's not on this chart. I kind of thought it'd be on this chart. I read it in a report. It might have been in the paper. Very significant, very large contamination of the environment is to be expected in an event like this. That's what they told us. But so let me go into that. I'm gonna stop the share here for just a second so I can talk to you, and then we're gonna go on the rest of this presentation. One thing I deal with in my job is safety of batteries in our avionics of the space launch system and rockets in general, and you get thermal runaway potential in a lithium-ion battery. I'm not going to go into the mechanisms of that, but you have a failure propagation from cell to cell. Once a cell gets hot, it can go into thermal runaway. And one cell over here burning can cause a cell over here to go hot and go thermal runaway. We got the same thing with these fuel rod assemblies. The hottest ones are going to be the ones that's got the youngest fuel, but as they burn, they're putting the heat into the younger ones, and also can cause them to burn. You saw the thermal propagation, the fire, they showed that stuff propagate. So it's not a case that just a younger fuel or the spent fuel rods for the younger fuel is going to burn. It can propagate to the others because your heat source now becomes the fire. And so you can get this thermal propagation burning a lot more of them. So you can bet the younger fuel rods will definitely burn up. It's already there in the test. You can see that. They didn't test, new to old propagation, but we know that's the kind of propagation mode you get, and kind of alluded to it. So what you would expect is that that would propagate to all these there. And remember, these cooling pools are overpacked. They're overpacked because they got nowhere to put all this stuff, because we spent all this money to build a deep underground safe storage place for the dry cast fuel in Yucca Mountain, which is really basically safer fuel once you dry casket, which is the, once it's over 10 years old, maybe you could dry casket at 5 years. That's one of the recommendations we see now. You got 10-year-old fuel in these fuel rod pools. They got everything the reactor's been running for the past 10 years. They're accumulating 2,000 tons nationally per year of this stuff, and 2,000 metric tons, excuse me. That's a lot of fuel accumulating nationwide in all of our reactors, just in the United States, at our 97 operating reactors. So what happens is that this propagates, it catches fire. If we could get some of the stuff out of these cooling pools, it wouldn't be as bad. Yucca Mountain was designed to take this stuff. Utah allowed us to go through and complete every last little nut and bolt in Yucca Mountain facility, every last little widget, outfit the offices and buy the memo pads, the desk, and the ink pens to run the places. And just before we take the fuel test, oh no, you can't bring fuel here. Oh no, you can't do that. Oh, they wanted every little possible penny spent to develop that place, but they had no intention of letting us use it. Well, I would submit to you that the people in Utah sitting right on top of Yucca Mountain and living at the foot of it, or even at the entrance of it, would be far safer if this fuel was inside that mountain than it is sitting out here. Remember, I showed the propagation of cesium-137 around the world. Yeah, the stuff, the heavier stuff falls out close to the planet, but we still had propagation going around the world from Fukushima. And what I tell you, we got Fukushima under control really fast. Why? Because we had pumper trucks going in there, pumping the water and keeping these spent fuel rod pools cool, and the reactor pools. Yeah, there's contaminated water. It may be getting in the ocean, but it would be a lot worse if that weren't available. Now, just imagine all 97 reactors in the United States, or all the 300 reactors around the world, cooking off. And there's nobody to stop that stuff. And that cesium just keeps coming out and keeps coming out, keeps coming out. That's what's going to happen. A lot of this fuel is going to burn up. It's going to burn up when these fuel rods burn. It is going to burn up and go up in smoke and flames. A lot of nuclear ashes and is going into the sky. So you're going to have radioactive particles that are going to be given, radioactive particles that's going to be emitting, the emitters. And it's the emitters that I told you about that you got to worry about. It's the beta particles, the alpha particles, and the gamma rays. All of these come from these products. And I've showed you this in a previous presentation, how that works, how much shielding you need from them. So that's what's going into the air. And a lot of it is going directly up in smoke when it burns. But what's happening? Your water's evaporated out of the pool. The uranium that does not go up in smoke will settle down as a big glob in the bottom of that pool, and we'll just sit there smoking and emitting stuff and giving off radiation and new fumes for years to come. So the problem with these nuclear power plants becomes, unlike a nuclear bomb, which blows up and 2 weeks later most of the radiation is gone, the nuclear power plants just keep giving. Now, I've talked about the spent fuel rod pools. Why? Because that's the part we ignore. We always think about the reactors. Yeah, the reactors are more dangerous. I mean, you could shoot them for boron, at least stop the nuclear reactions in them. You still got hot fuel that needs to be cool. But they do have a containment building, but still, they have to put water on them. And Fukushima, we had reactors explode because of hydrogen gas buildup. There may be things to do to handle that kind of stuff. And we had to, seal Chernobyl with concrete. A lot of Russians gave their lives to fly in concrete and dump it in there, and they got radiation poisoning. They survived the heroic deed that they accomplished on behalf of the world. See, Russians can do good things. I tell you, there's good people in every country, every race, religion, culture, creed around the world. And I've always said it's the people that run the countries we got to watch about, and that includes our own. No exception. No exception. It's the people that run the countries that you better worry about. Yeah, countries should be an outmoded idea. That's what Einstein thought, but he wanted a big global conglomeration, which is worse, far worse. Anyway, we need control at the lowest level possible. Anyway, freedom. So let's go back to this. The So this is the problem. These plants, if you take out the power grid for any reason, these plants are going to be at risk of going off like this. So let's see, how kind of reasons do we have? The power grid could go down, high altitude electromagnetic pulse, solar coronal mass ejection, Newman's Red earthquake could possibly take down the United States power grid. Wow, there's two of these are natural and going to happen sooner or later. Well, absolutely will happen, both of those. And high altitude electromagnetic pulse, if we get in war with Russia or China, it's in their military doctrine. The first thing they will do to us is hit us with an EMP. Oh, it's also in the doctrine of Iran, should they have the capability to launch an EMP, but they also have sleeper cells in the United States, allegedly 20 of them, to take out our ground stations, 9 of which are estimated to be what's required to bring down the entire grid. Wow. And then we got these domestic knuckleheads who think it's a good thing to take our grid down. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I got several people telling me, oh, Greg, if the grid goes down, it's okay. I'm back up here in the mountains and I got my water. I got my food. I'll be just fine. Several people told me that. Okay, one, you're going to get irradiated. And that radiation is going to keep coming. I don't care where you live. You may get less in some areas than others. And I did the nuclear bug out stuff, so it'll give you ideas where you're going to get less of it, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit in here about how to deal with it. But you're going to get radiation. You're going to get some radiation. No radiation is good. Okay, and furthermore, yeah, the people in the cities, they're going to come out like ants out of a fire ant mound when you kick it, and they're going to be looking for something to eat. Of course, if you get a nuclear war, at least the cities have been eliminated, but those nuclear power plants are still going to be a problem. But no, you know, that would be an awful thing. I'm not advocating that by any measure. That would be horrible. But yeah, there's no pretty picture in any of this. When the grid goes down, it's ugly. Any radiological event is ugly, be it nuclear war or grid down. Grid down is a nuclear radiological event. It may be started by a nuclear blast at high. You gotta remember, Russia counts that as electronic warfare, not warfare. But they're only damaging your electronics, at least initially. So there you go, my friends. Wow. So let's, if I'm switching charts, I'm gonna go back in the presentation here. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, that's not the presentation. Pardon me. One more time. Here we go. All right. So let's look at, yeah, I think I'm in the presentation, but I'm not. These are some of your patterns for if we fall under attack, where it's thought we would get hit at target areas, and what you would expect, you know, the radiation from the blast themselves. This is not fallout. This is from the blast. Now the fallout patterns are going to show in a little bit. Well, this might be fallout with no winds. Yeah, right here. You see this? That shows the fallout from this little dot. That little dot, and this is a fallout from that dot to give you an idea what they're trying to model here. So just bear that in mind. The fall, you know, this is your initial events. Here's the this is another map that shows regions of fallout, you know, just kind of glopped together because they don't know which way the wind's going to blow. But it's just one model. This is based on certain wind assumptions. The winds can blow many different directions. There's another model based on target and wind assumptions. Prevailing winds, and it's like 1 week after the event where all the fallout would be. H+1. So that's 1 week later. This was from a simulation they ran. Here's another one. Well, this assumes the wind is blowing purely from the west. So yeah, don't ever do quite that. It's more like this or like this. And again, this is a more limited target assumption here because they don't show like my area getting nuked and some other areas that we know are potential target zones. So, and then I don't know what you got here. You got some, I guess that's maybe short-lived winds and longer-lived winds. I don't know. You know, here is where your missile launch sites are. They're going to be the heaviest targets. And why, you know, San Diego in here, the naval base, you think that would be targeted. So, you know, this is from the Federal Emergency Management Association. Okay, this is their chart. And it's based on, again, certain assumptions. This gives you ideas. And here's a whole nother set of assumptions. Areas of continental United States crossed by more than one nuclear cloud from above ground detonations. I guess they're assuming the winds are moving around here. This is probably more realistic, because over time of a week or two, winds aren't going to move, or a day or two. Regions with a better chance to survive a nuclear war. Hey, my buddy, new days, old ways, you might have something going for you up there. If you're in Texas, this is where you want to go to. Now look at here, the free state of Jefferson or the free state of Idaho. All these talk about seceding, right? These may be areas that may be better from at least that metric. There may be other metrics that would get them. So let's just walk back through these real quick. Let's look at these. Again, these are the initial blast. This is the fallout patterns. This is, winds go which way, certain wind assumptions, other certain wind assumptions. Yeah, look here, I'm clear in that one. It's also, there's target and wind assumption in these. That one looks pretty nasty. That's straight winds. I don't know how they model it that way. These are more predominant kind of winds you would get, but more limited target list. So you can see, guys, this is kind of all over the map. So in the end, watch my nuclear bug out video. So shelters, let's get into shelters. You may remember, I will show this chart again from the previous presentation, just because it is directly germane to what we're talking about. A shelter has a protection factor. A protection factor of 32 means that only 1 out of 32 gamma rays gets to you, because when you're shielding, it's the gamma rays you're shielding from. Right? We talked about alpha and beta particles in the last video, and I said you better take a shower and get them off. Leave your clothing outside after you take it off. It's contaminated from it, because you don't want to take that stuff into your living area. And if you have to walk nude in front of everybody else, well, you're surviving. It ain't got nothing to do with, there's nothing sexy about a nuclear war or a radiated victim. Okay, so get that out of your head. You're trying to survive. Hopefully you got some modicums of privacy protocols in place so you can take care of business, but you got to get your clothing off. You got to shower down, get that dust off of you, because your skin can stop it, but once it gets inside of you, you got a severe problem, because it's a gift that keeps on giving. So the guys who say that the alpha particles and beta particles are safe are full of crap, because if you swallow the alpha emitters, you're not going to swallow a beta particle. But if you swallow an alpha particle, an alpha emitter, you got issues. That's a helium nucleus. Or if you swallow strontium 90, some of the bigger radiological radionuclides, you got problems. The iodine, cesium 137, I talked about those previously too. All right, shelter. If you're standing out in the open, it's pretty obvious you got no protection. Oh yeah, I talked about the radiation levels that you could survive with out there in my previous chart. You can get dosimeters that tell you how much dose you've accumulated. Things like Geiger counters might tell you how many particles are active, in the air at a certain place, but they're a very limited value. Okay. Now, the more shielding you get, the better. Hey, if you're going to an inside room in your house, if you got nothing else to shield you, it gives you slight protection. Just slight protection. If you're in an area without a lot of fallout, or if you're a good distance from a nuclear blast, that might help you survive, maybe. If you can get underground, well, that's better. It's fair protection. The best protection is if you're underground with shielding around you. The more mass, the better. Remember, what is this? This is based on 3.6-inch slices of rammed earth, packed earth, dense earth. 18 inches would be sufficient if it's packed and dense. If it's loose earth, you got to double that. You're talking 36 inches. Okay. Maybe 7 inches of lead. I don't remember what the exact lead equivalent is. You can use water for shielding, for Pete's sake. Put water barrels, around wherever you want to stay. Water makes a good shielding. Food makes a good shielding. If you're prepping, you got food, you got water. Use that as your shielding, for Pete's sake. Hey, you can go in your basement and just stack up water barrels, but just remember, at one point, when they come together, it's thin. So you can better set another barrel in front of it. Maybe have 2 rows of water barrels, and throw some planks overhead, and throw your food supplies up there. Hey guys, that's one way to build you a quick, expedient shelter underground, or even above ground if you had to, in the middle of your house. I'm going to show you that kind of stuff too. If you're in high-rise buildings that have survived the event, you want to be in the middle floors. And it shows the better floors, the lower floors are being a little better, but that's true initially. If there's fallout falling, You want to be away from the ground. You'd be better off up here. You're better off higher up once there's fallout. So, and this gives you, this is that protection factor. Remember I said one, if your protection factor is 32, that means 1 out of 32 particles are getting to you. Here, almost everything's getting to you. Here it's less. This is better. And yeah, 1,000 above, oh, you're really protected. So if you're in the middle of the house, you got a little bit of protection. If your house is underground, 2 to 10. Well, that's not your protection factor of 32. Remember, that's where you're aiming for. It's 32 probably. 10 to 250. Okay, this starts to get to be fair here. You're in a basement. You're all the way underground, and you got some of the house above you helping to shield. And here in this tower, look, either you're underground or you're way above the ground, away from the fallout. Here you're in the ground. This is even better with a shelter around you. It's 250 to 1,000. Again, you're in the ground in the middle of the building, so a lot of the building mass gives you shielding, or you're way up above the ground to get away from the fallout that's on the ground. This is after all the other gamma rays, of course, from the nuclear blast are already over, and it would be. Or if you're deep underground, or got a whole lot of building, like several floors of basements that some buildings would have, or you're really in a deep bunker, 1,000. Yes, that's the best right there. That's the best you can have. So a lot of plans for do-it-yourself shelters, my friends. There's tons of plans and ideas out there for it. Just remember, you got to have ventilation that shows as vents opening. You may want to put filters on the ventilation, especially in your place. Oh yeah, if you get a radiological event to stop the alpha particles from getting in your house, especially the first couple of days, maybe the first couple of weeks, you want to put plastic over your windows and doors to keep particles out. You probably, if you got wide open space in your house, you can survive for a brief period of time with things shielded that way. But if you got a bunch of people in a little shelter, you're going to have to put in vent holes, put some kind of filters in, and devise a means to pump air to keep it moving through there with bellows or hand wave wand, fans, or maybe you got power still from some source and can actually run a fan. You may want to use HEPA filters. Here it shows the mass of the floor, but here they built a little frame inside and they put bricks on top, bricks and block. And remember the shelter here, this entranceway. No, it's not straight in. We're going to go into that more in a minute. So yeah, he's got the joist of the floor, and he made his own joist in here and put stuff on top of it. Well, guys, you can put up water barrels and throw some beams across and then put plywood up there and just stack food on top of it. That is one way to deal with it. And when it's all said and done, you got, again, you see, you don't have an entrance walking straight, and you come in and bend around. I'm going to show you mine in a minute. That's the way to do it. Yeah, but look, with Griddown, you're going to be watching TV. That's good to know. Some of these shelters show a TV in them. Isn't that funny? Here they're showing double bricking to give you more shielding. I've seen it's really better if you use like 2 of these real thick concrete blocks. I'll show that in a minute. Here's an underground shelter that's partially underground with earth piled on top of it, and that's loose earth. So that's about 3 foot of earth. You need about 3 foot to make that effective. 3 foot. And here's how some guys building a shelter. Looks like they're starting with a tent type structure and probably putting ferro concrete on it, which is your spray on concrete. Here's a guy who's taking his workbench in his shop and he's just piling his supplies up around it. And I think this shop happens to be in a basement. But yeah, see, that's one way. You want mass between you and the radiation. That's the key thing. And here's somebody using chest of drawers and a table, maybe a bed top. He's got a little kiddie pool up here with sand or water in or something. Yeah, it looks like sand. It's whatever junk they can find, pour in, 6-pack of Cokes or beer or whatever he's got. This guy is building, these 2 guys are building a real expedient shelter, and they're going to hunker under this table, basically. And here's some people in their basement with a little lean-to kind of improvised shelter above them. And whether they're using bricks or air, they got various things piled up in here to make that work. Here's a conduit type underground shelter. A conduit, a culvert, excuse me. Culvert. You can build these yourself, or you can buy them. Atlas is the biggest company doing this kind of stuff, and they built tons of these shelters for Bill Gates. He's got big, major, multi-million-dollar shelters all over the world. So he intends to survive. Billy Gates. Now, hey, if you had to, everybody could crawl into a culvert, but just how long would you be smiling like that? It might be a party for the first 5 minutes. All right, now that's pretty tight, guys. This is some analysis. They've done a lot of analysis on packing people in these tight shelters like this. But guys, you better have some air moving. That's a whole lot of people packed in tight, and you can be getting hot in there because every person is about a 100-watt heater. So, or is it a kilowatt? Yes, a kilowatt. Every person puts out about a kilowatt of heat. So you're gonna be heating that little place up in a hurry and consuming the oxygen. So you better have some airflow. Yeah, here we are. Well, don't they look heck? Well, they might be for surviving, but I bet if you're gonna be in an elegant evening gown and a suit for a long time. Here's a shelter above ground that's using probably double layer of these concrete block. So economy, family type, A-bomb shelter. You can build these yourself, you know, and again, I've seen plans for these based on using cinder blocks, use the big thick ones. I think I got a picture of them in here. If not, I'll mention it too. I'll go into it more. So yeah, they got their air vent up here. So you can tell this is back in the 50s. It looks like maybe even the 40s. And there's a totally underground shelter with concrete across the top up built, kind of like it maybe a storm shelter. Storm shelters could look the same. You know what? I've already decided this is the shelter that I want. For some reason, I like this shelter a whole lot. This is the shelter I want to have right there. Because that shelter, you know, it attracts things, you know. That's the shelter I want. All right, here we go. Yeah, there's that TV again. Yeah, and it's got rabbit ears. Yeah, what do you get? What you can be picking up something with rabbit ears underneath all this stuff. Okay. Hey, you know what? If you got a VCR or a DVD player, you might watch something. May do it on your computer. There's a storm shelter. These good old boys are set, right? Beats nothing. Many ways to come up with a mess. Here's guys with just bags held up by some kind of metal, like maybe cow panel, but it looks like these bags probably come away. They just got a front end loader dumping in dirt. And it looks like they got some kind of, maybe an ISO shipping container in here or some kind of dirt or metal across there. And they'll probably pile dirt on top of that, just like this, once this is filled up. Many ways to come up with a shielding. Sandbags. Sandbags. Here's a sandbag root cellar, which can also be a tornado shelter. So you should get dual use out of these things. Don't build it for just one reason. You may never do it. Make dual, maybe triple use out of it. Okay. Now here's your basement bunker shelter. This guy's laying double blocks on top, and he's got these blocks around here, and he's got his ventilation. Oh, let's see. Well, okay, he comes in here, then he turns. Okay. Yeah, you can't have a straight entrance open or you're gonna get radiation straight in. Here's a block I was talking about. 12 by 8 by 16. This is the really big block. You can get them from Lowe's, or at least you could when I put this picture together a few days ago for $2.35 each. If you had two of these, it would give you most of the radiation shielding you would need, but you could also throw dirt up against it. Now, if you're in the ground in a ditch, and if a particle lands 3 foot behind you, this is the shielding you get from that particle. That one lands right here. Well, obviously, you're not getting as much shielding. What does this show? This shows, I had a previous gentleman on the channel says, well, don't have to worry about gamma rays because they shoot straight across because they're not light. Well, they do, except for light. The reason you see a laser is the light's getting scattered. Same way with a flashlight. The reason you see the beam is the light gets scattered. That's why you can see sky being blue, and light does scatter, and gamma rays do too. So the gamma ray comes up, hits a molecule of air, and zam, right in the back of your head. So yeah, it's not all going to be straight lines. So this idea you can have your ventilation totally open at the upper floor and let the radiation zoom back and forth with gamma rays. I think I said that was okay. No, it's not okay. I mean, it's, to maybe a low point, but I wouldn't do it myself, guys. Here we are now. This is why you want to have a long entrance before you turn and get a window where you're at. You're trying to stop the gamma rays. If they're shining in this way, they're going to bounce, and all this stuff is going to end right here. Or in your entrance this way is going to be protected by this flap of shielding here. So, but if you open it up and leave it obtuse, the stuff's going to reflect off this wall, that wall, and come in at you. So it all depends on what kind of reflection paths are available to the gamma rays, because they're light and they do reflect. Yeah, they're light. They're made out of photons. Okay. This is also various shelter types buried in the ground. And this looks like a culvert type system here. These are blocks buried in the ground for the most part, or in the basement. This one's above ground. Yeah, this is one you can do without having to dig in, but you want a lot of mass in there, guys. And you want to put a good footing in for it when you build it, or else it's going to sink. This shows covering up those basement windows. Now, I had a guy says you don't need to do that. Well, you want to cover. Hey, even books give you shelter. Here's a guy making them a lean-to and just throwing dirt on it for a shelter. Well, that might work, or maybe he's just trying to cover his window. Either way, that could have some effectivity. Beats nothing. All right, dual use. Make use of your shelter for other purposes. Make it a root cellar, a food storage pantry, an extra bedroom, a storm shelter, root cellar. Yeah, all these things. You can make it several of these things. Make your place dual or triple use. Here's a guy showing how. Now, a lot of these come from various DoD, and a lot of these stuff come from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I got stuff in here from Sandia. Various sources for these. There's various publications that were published in the 40s and 50s, and some even up into the 60s. We're showing you stuff. This is a plywood box. Basically, like I build my worm boxes. Somebody took a sheet of plywood, made a floor out of it. Another sheet made a roof out. Another sheet and cut it in half to make two ends. And they put 2 sheets of plywood on the side. So they got 7 sheets of plywood in building this thing, plus whatever they're putting down here to hold it immediately off the ground. They're just covering it up with dirt. This may be really good if you're out in the desert where we don't get a lot of rain. It would have very limited use in a wet climate like where I'm at here. But that's a quick and dirty, expedient shelter that you could build pretty quick. Although you're going to be pretty uncomfortable putting your mom and dad and a kid or two in a 4x8 box that's 4 foot tall. Beats nothing though. It's a way to survive. But that's what it shows here. You know, everybody in a very small box. And again, this is kind of a lean-to. Somebody's built a box, put it on the side, and they're putting in planking and filling the dirt in, and then raise the planking up as they put the dirt in. They got sandbags over here. That's the plywood box again. Oh yeah, what's he got up here in this plywood box? Let's go back to it. He's putting sandbags here, and he's got a flap built in here, but he's going to have this for ventilation of sorts, and that's for ventilation. All right, so let's go back into that. And again, this is some of your plans for bunkers and ground. There's a lot of these plans. This one's looks like set in concrete. You got some steps going down. And again, you would have the door is over here. So you go down these steps and turn them sideways and go on a door. And you got your air tube here. Of course, it's bent, so rainwater's not going to go down in there. And he's got a filter here. See, he's not just got the air coming straight in. He's got a filter to keep all those particles out that we talked about. And this is another view, a side view. This is the same thing. This is an end view, and this is a side view. So I suppose the door, you're walking down the steps down here, and the door you turn and come in here, and this is your living area, and this is some kind of roof system here, vent. And here is a guy just dug a trench. He's throwing logs on it and about to cover it over with dirt. This is going to be what he's going to get into. Now, if you got a backhoe, you can do that in a hurry. Backhoe and some chainsaws. Here's two, says non-athletic college girls who completed a 4-person pole-covered shelter in 35.5 hours. Despite true, Rich, what are you going to have 35.5 hours to do this? May be the ultimate question. But, you know, if you're putting, hang on. A lot of these designs show that using poles and covering them with dirt and using poles on the ground. Well, you better have it well drained and use plastic polyurethane or something to shield that if you want this to last any time. Especially here in the South, eventually these poles and wood underground is going to have another problem. It's going to be black mold, which can kill you. Black mold will be a big problem with underground logs. Believe you me, my wood hinge, I was trying to figure out how to do that. Wood underground in Alabama. That was one of the project ideas. I think maybe I can pull it off, but it's going to be an experiment. And it shows gamma rays coming at different angles into your shelter. If you got this open here, and then you're living way over here somewhere. This is the floor. So you got this entrance, and they're trying to get you away from 30 inches of earth. I said 3 foot. Well, 30 inches at least. Here they got the poles and the trench. They're showing 3.5 feet here. You know, you want the end sloped, or otherwise it's just going to slough off on you. And they've got earth in here. Well, they got plastic inside, like an arch, so that when it rains, it's going to go down. And they got several layers, apparently, of plastic laid in here so that the rain will go off. And they got drainage ditches around it. Very smart. This is an underground pole house. trench with pole covering at least. That's a trench with poles over the top, and you got your little walking around, walkway like I showed you before, which don't get the gamma rays directly into. And you go up the steps out a little hatch door, and they got a vent over here. And they got benches for everybody to sit on. I guess you got to sleep on that bench too, or you got a hammock. I don't know where you're storing your food, but same kind of similar scenario here. This is also a lot of the same kind of stuff here. Poles. These are all Oak Ridge National Laboratory concepts. You see these in many survival books, but all these designs here were developed by Oak Ridge National Laboratory. How I know? ORNL, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and that's their drawing number, 787204. Call it Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Say, hey, I want drawing number 787204. Maybe they don't know what you're talking about. If you tell them what it is, shelters, they might be able to zoom in on it. But Oak Ridge National Laboratory did a lot of this shelter planning. Now, there are other sources for some of these, but anything coming from the government is free and available to use, because they can't have any copyrights or patents. Well, they can patent stuff, but they, copyrights. They can, you're free to use any material the government develops like that. Again, this is a underground pole bunker. I think I'll get me some I'd really go buy me some conduit. Not conduit, culvert. I keep calling it conduit. Now here somebody just got sandbags. They piled a door, put a door or some kind of plywood or something on top and just covered it up with dirt. It's one way. They're just folding sheets of plastic and throwing dirt in it to make something that's kind of like a sandbag. All right, these are all Oak Ridge. I think this is all Oak Ridge National Laboratory stuff. Here you basically building a little fort above ground with TP poles arrangement and covering it with dirt. So you're not even dug in at all here. But look here, you got the plastic layer in it. It's got that plastic layer. Yeah, I should probably, you could do a day on any one of these designs. I mean, you could do weeks of coursework on this whole thing of nuclear survival. Here, a guy is underground. What I said, you got to have some way to get air in. Oh, look, he's in his basement. He's got his upper floor above him. He's got his books and water and food stuff piled on the floor above him to give him radiation shield up there rather than have a floor here. And what he's got a door here, and he's got a pull cord where he's pumping fresh air in just by pulling the cord. Like I said, and then here's the exit. Like I said, you got to have fresh air, guys. And again, here's another pull cord pulling air in, and they got a tent over this to keep the fallout from coming straight down into the shelter itself. You don't want to fall out in the shelter, so put something over your entrances to keep the fallout out. And water. So this is another underground. This trench is reinforced in this case with timbers, unlike some of the others. Might not be a great idea here in the south. But here's you got earth bags, and here's a flapping entrance, which you probably could also put a pull cord to and pump air with. Here's a guy pumping air with a little handheld fan he's built. You can also build belluses, guys. You know how to build a bellus. But here it's just a 14-inch by 16-inch square with a couple of handles on it, making what we call a blade here. Just a big fan, two-handed fan. Don't forget food survival. Take a picture of this. Stop and do a screenshot. Control print screen of this screen. Give you an idea of what kind of supplies you need to stock back to survive. This is a basic 1-year survival ration for one adult male. A whole kernel hard wheat. I don't know about that. 16 ounces per day. Pounds per day. I don't know. That's some kind of strange to me. I think this is for the year here. It says that per day, but per year down here. Pinto beans, milk powder. So your diet's going to be whole kernel hard wheat, pinto beans, milk powder, vegetable oil, sugar, salt, and multivitamins. Hey, go to prepwithgreg.com. Got some better choices than that, guys. Same thing here. Oh yeah, back then it might have cost this. You're gonna pay a lot more than that now just for one of these items. Inflation, my friends, inflation. That's a funny price, right? For proper sewage, yeah, you think about your sanitary means. Hey, you can dig trenches, compost, and toilets may help you guys research compost and toilet, which is basically like a bucket you know, and with some maybe sawdust in it or lime. You can't maybe put a little lime down every time you use it, and tamp a piece of paper all the way across wherever you do your business. And then you can fill up a garbage can that way for a while inside your shelter. It won't be pleasant, but it's a way to go without having to go outdoors, which can kill you. Just remember the full spectrum of things you need in day-to-day life that needs to be kept in a clean, dry, safe place and storage. In your shelter, we don't want radiation to get to it, including radiation meters. Here, my friend Craig Douglas sells those. Go back and look at my video with Craig Douglas and go to his site, and you can buy a lot of these meters. You don't sell Geiger counters, though. You can get those from other stores online. Just look for Geiger counters. All right, what you can do for your farm? Your animals need protecting too. Take your barn, pile dirt up against the side of it. Remember, if you got a barn loft like the old-fashioned barns, you might be better off because you got hay in it. It can help knock out a lot of stuff. Fallout's going to fall on the roof. You eventually can wash these roofs off. But the animals, look here, he's got clean water. He's using water on the side here to help provide shielding. The more of that you got, the better off the animals are for shielding and maybe for water to drink later. If you're using municipal water for your farm, you're not going to have it anymore. Those days will be over. So you better want some stored water, but you better figure out how to get a well or something else going. Again, it's just fallout seeping down to the tops of your silos. Basically, whatsoever the grain on top you'd want to get rid of. The hay on top you need to get rid of. If you burn it, don't get in the smoke. You just get irradiated. When you're in the habitat, have something. We'll come back to the farm in a minute. Have something for kitties to do or you to do to occupy your mind while you're sitting in there for the next little room for 2 weeks. Buy survival manuals and read them. Get a DVD player and have a little battery and watch download my videos and watch them. Anyway, well, the good news is if you're properly stocked, you got a shot at surviving. It won't be pretty. This is not a pretty picture, but you can make it through if you're not at ground zero and if you plan properly. All right, and I'm going to stop this share because I'm going to talk a little bit more here about this now. Farming. Strontium 90 has an affinity for calcium, which means strontium 90 is going to go into milk, it's going to go into the bone, and it's going to go into green leafy vegetables, especially those rich in calcium, like spinach. You got this stuff growing outside, and fallout falls on it, you can't use it. Now, it's best if you know fallout is coming to cover your compost piles, maybe even just cover over your garden, throw plastic over it or tarps. And then after the fallout event is over, remove those things. Then sure you got plants sitting there on the tarp, or a clear piece of plastic. The sun's cooked it, or it's been irradiated, or just no water. Probably your plants are going to be dead that's there. But sunflowers will take radiation out of the soil. But just remember, you don't want to eat the sunflower seeds or the use of sunflower stalks afterwards. You take them away and put them somewhere never to be used again because they're radioactive, they're contaminated. But they'll pull that contamination out of the ground. They also pull a lot of heavy metals out of the ground. So they're good for that kind of stuff. You want to scrape off, well, your best soil is your topsoil. You want to scrape off a couple inches of that stuff to start with. You get all that, the strontium 90 and that stuff that's falling on top away. Get it as soon as you can. So scrape your soil. You might get away with scraping an inch of it, but vegetables that's in the ground, if something's deep enough, I don't know. You just got to be careful about eating anything. If you're in a fallout area, you don't use any of it. I wouldn't use any of it. There's people that may give you various recommendations. Trees that are pulling from deep in the soil for their produce may be safe. You want to probably use a radiation detector, but most of your radioactive stuff is not settling deep. It's going to settle at the surface. If you get rid of that surface soil fast, you want to take it out, get rid of it, dig it away. So maybe your nut trees might be okay, but if you got nuts in them, if they had fallout on them, you wash them off. At least you can wash the shell of the nut off. So maybe the nuts will be okay. Fruits, fresh fruits are going to be messed up because you're going to have that stuff on it. Maybe you can wash that stuff off. I don't know, guys. But things that would absorb calcium, make calcium rich, will all be contaminated by strontium 90. That's the key thing to know of your garden. But like I said, I would take my compost piles and just throw stuff over it all so it won't get contaminated. Your worm beds, Throw stuff over it that you can remove later to take the fallout away. Your house, your greenhouses, walk out with a hose, shower them off so all that fallout that's on the roof will go on the ground. Make sure you don't get the water spattered on yourself and don't go around the edges where the stuff washes off. And if you got a full mission protective posture suit to wear, like what you call a mop level suit, it's plastic and breathing apparatus and all that. So that's what you need. You need to put some of those in your prepping supplies to deal with these kind of events when you're outside initially working around. If you want to see how long it takes that radiation to die down, I would wait 3 weeks before I went outside. If you are in an area where there was fallout, leave. That may never be a acceptable place to live. You just got to probably go. But if you weren't in a direct fallout pattern or to the very edge of, you may be okay after a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So that's what you. Once you get nuclear power plants around, wow, you see, that's just a problem, especially considering that wind just keeps moving around. And then a lot of the fallout of a nuclear blast, which is going to go in one direction, the nuclear power plant, it's like a wind socket. It's going to move around over the days, and it will be generous to everybody all around it. But if you're in the area of the least prevailing winds and maybe 30 miles away, you're probably okay, generally speaking. So there's different things. The nuclear events from a bomb are the ones that's going to give you the fallout stuff that's going to go the furthest step, because it's going to go up in that cloud and precipitate out over time and fall. It'll still the heavier particles fall closest. The nuclear power plants give you that too. It's going to be closer to the plant, probably with the heavier stuff. But like I said, cesium-137 all the way around the world from Fukushima. And you can see from a lot of the other tests with the milking cows in Washington State from things that happened in Russia. So yes, the stuff travels. It will travel. And if you got the whole 300 nuclear power plants worldwide that cooked off because there was a global Carrington level event, then hey, it's going to be a mess everywhere. But that's a gift that will just keep giving and just keep getting worse. Yikes. You might want to figure out how to have a permanent power source deep underground and have figure out some way to have lights that last forever. Where you get that? LEDs will last a few years. Maybe it'll keep you going for a while and grow food underground. Yikes, guys. Have lots of storage and seeds that stayed for a long time, because it's going to be a while where it's safe to come out again. How long? Well, 10 years before they stop irradiating. But look at the half-lives on that stuff. Some of it's got long half-lives. So you may never want to come up in your lifetime. I don't know, my friends. It can be ugly. Go to the moon. Go to Mars. Go to Venus. I got habitat designs for the atmospheres of Venus. Okay, guys. All seriousness. You're not Griddown. You're not going to be climbing in a spaceship and going anywhere. There won't be no kind of transportation. If you're already there, hey, you might be good. Whew. Nobody's there yet, and nobody's going anytime in the next year or two. That's a given. So if all this stuff happens next year or two, bye-bye. We're in trouble. It's going to be a rough ride. Some people say they don't want to survive it. I said, as long as you got a breath in your lungs, fight for it. Keep going. I do believe a lot of people will survive. I've said it's our objective to be able to get through this stuff, survive, stand up, shake the dust off, and build a better world. I think we can do that if this stuff hits. It won't be easy, but at some point we'll find a way through this, and we'll find a way to stand up and build a far better world. All right, that said, well, I may not be able to post this tonight. It's getting late. Took a while to do this. My friends, take care of yourselves. I do believe we can make it through these things. We do have a risk of nuclear war. It is an existent risk because we're facing Russia and China. Good thing the leader in Korea is so stable. I'm so happy with that. North Iran, and yeah, and then you add to that our nuclear power plants. Griddown. That's the one that's going to get you if nothing else does. Unless we all get together and do what needs to be done and get our power grid hardened. And if there's much of this fuel in Yucca Mountain or somewhere, get it buried. What can you do? Call your senators, call your state representatives and tell them to force Utah to take this stuff. If you're in Utah, where the Yucca Mountain was built, no, it's Nevada, pardon me, Nevada. If you're in Nevada, call your local guys and say, guys, you realize we'll be safer with that stuff in the mountain right here than we will be with all this stuff out in the open air? That's a fact. You will be safer. So friends, that's what we got to do. Get the grid hardened, get that stuff going, maybe get some backup generation for our nuclear power plants and form bucket brigades. Keep that water going. There's things we got to do to keep ourselves safe. We put our heads together, we'll figure a way out through it. But if it happens tomorrow morning, we ain't got it all put together yet, guys. We got a problem. Let's hope that we can get these things moving. We got to put a lot of extra emphasis on getting this grid hardened. We've been talking to our congressmen and stuff for over a decade about this, and too little, too late. We need to get it moving now. There's no more excuses. We need to push this. And we got to push against those federal agencies and the regulatory systems and the companies that's been stopping us. Call the company execs and knock on their door. Says, look, guy, you better get this darn grid hardener. I'm gonna come looking for you when I'm glowing in the dark. I'll be able to see you then, day or night. And you're gonna have to feed me. And if you got nothing to give me, I'm eating you. Just kidding. I do not advocate violence in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But guys, these people need to know they're going to be held accountable. They need to know that. And they need to know if they do the right thing and do it now, there shouldn't be anything to worry about. When the sun goes, and you got a Carrington event, or something stronger than a Carrington event, you should be able to walk outside and enjoy the fireworks. Say, ooh, ain't that beautiful? Not have to worry about it. That's where we could be. If we get a grid hardened, instead you're going to go, oh my God, it's the end of the world, and I know it. That's the difference. Let's get it fixed. And let's hope and pray that we don't do anything stupid to get us into a nuclear war. And that's another thing you might write and call your congressman about. Now, how do you write and call your congressman? Why do you do that? Go to freedomrestorationfoundation.org and go to the Action Center page. There's everything you know about contacting finding out who your Congress critters and your state representatives are and how to write them, call them, email them, mail them, all that stuff. Talk to them, do that. Do it now. Share this video to everyone you can. Do that now. And the one before this, part 1. All right, my friends. With that, I'm going to say we can fix it, we can make it better, but boy, we better get started, and we better get started fast. Hope and pray it's not too late. Prep now. Don't delay anymore. Prep now is crucial. Supply chains unraveling. None of this happens. Unraveling the supply chains, increase the prices, food availabilities, inavailabilities next year too. If you're not gardening, you're not prepping, you will be having some issues. Oh, by the way, if you want to garden, check out my link below to Tree Leaf Market. Friends, thank you for watching. Reg out.